everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we're exploring healing from past traumas in order to build healthy habits and move forward in your life towards success. Here to help us do that is life, addiction, and relationship coach Riana Milne. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey. Riana Milne, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
We're happy to have you as a life, addictions, and relationship coach, among your other titles. So many.
Yeah, I do a lot of different things. There are a lot of different hats.
Oh, wonderful. Well, to start out with, will you take a moment to introduce yourself and what brought you to this point in your life and career, and why this
Sure.
direction in your life?
Okay. Well, my official titles is I am a life, love, trauma, recovery, and mindset coach. And I work globally with adults ages 16 to 76 to help them heal unconscious childhood and love trauma, to go on to create the life they desire and to have the love that they deserve. I've also been a licensed mental health counselor in this field for 22 years. An SAC is a student assistance counselor, where I worked in every grade level as a counselor, working with kids of trauma. Worked in a mental health unit with kids age 5 to 19 in a hospital ward. Also with women of the prison system, celebrities, top business professionals. So it's quite a diverse group of clients that I have. I do work with men and women, singles and couples, straight and LGBTQ, because the bottom line is childhood trauma has no prejudice. And recent research shows 100% of people do have childhood trauma, and it impacts their life and love relationships and even their success in business in many different ways. And that's what we're going to go into here. A little bit about my story. I did start as a traditional licensed mental health counselor in private practice. My company was called Therapy by the Sea in year 2000. And I have a triple master's in applied clinical and counseling psychology, graduated summa cum laude with honors. And while I was growing my therapy business, I was doing all these other jobs to help bring income to support my family. Why I got into it, I always wanted to be a counselor since the age of 14. I was really bullied in middle school and somewhat into high school. And I asked my mom if I could go see a counselor, and she said, no one in this family will ever go see a counselor. And I said, in defiance, then I will grow up and become one. So I subscribed to Psychology Today magazine and started reading that at age 14 to try and help myself through my own trauma and feel happier about life. And that's how it went on. And then at 16, my very best friend died suddenly by a drunk driver. And I had another best friend from Penn State murdered by her boyfriend. So I lost two friends very early. But after Michael's death, I started studying the masters in mindset and spirituality to help healing, growth from healing, finding meaning from the pain. And that really became a big part of my personal life, studying the masters and mindset work. At 26, I opened up my own model and talent agency and company. I used the Mindset for Success philosophy that I created to help small town people make it in the big markets, singers, models, actors, dancers. And it really worked. The mindset work. So I've been teaching mindset work since my 20s. So that's over 40 years. And I really love it. So I really specialized starting in the love and childhood trauma after I went through a love trauma myself. I actually had two of them, one with my Penn State person and then one later in life. And I had to figure out, why do I attract people that are hurtful? And I really wanted to know, because I'm an avid reader and there was no answers in the books, and therapists couldn't help me, even though I was one. I went to 7 therapist friends and they didn't know why my ex had a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality, an entire secret life. And all I knew was that I have to heal and make sure this doesn't happen again. So that's how the love trauma became a part of it. And the research I did was so deep and profound that I said, I need to take this message to the world and help change the way the world loves. So in 2017, had a practice in Florida by that time, and I closed that and went global. So I've been working as a global coach ever since.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. How many people you've helped, such diversity and
Yeah.
just in individual situations to just really dive in and address those traumas and
Yeah,
recovery.
I went back later to get the CCTP, which is Certified Clinical Trauma Professional, because I really took this avenue of my business extremely seriously. And, I just found that there was so much that so many people didn't know about this. And when I started talking about it in 2012, I also created the Childhood Trauma Checklist. That is a global assessment used still today. And it's an easy assessment where adults can easily tell if they had childhood trauma or not. And it's a quick 10 item checklist. And that's when I started talking about childhood trauma. And people would say, they're crazy. People don't have trauma like that. And then the Kaiser study came out about unhealed childhood trauma and how that really impacts people in early disease and early death. And that was done with 17,000 overweight people struggling with their weight that had childhood trauma. So the direct correlation of, healthy eating, healthy food, feeling healthy about yourself, mind, body, spirit, was really going back to childhood trauma. But my work was more about life, love, relationships, and business. And theirs was more about disease, diet, and early death.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of a little merger of the two with
Yes and no, because their ACE study was very different from what my 10 childhood traumas were. And I created the list from people I was actually working with trauma. And when I saw their list, I'm like, oh my God, did they miss a lot? How could they not include abandonment? How could they not include kids from the foster care system? Because again, these are kids of trauma I would be working on very intensely. And they left to me a lot out of that ACE test. And that's used a lot, and they're missing a lot of the real traumas that did occur for kids.
Sure. Now, on that note, will you tell us about what you consider the top 10 traumas that people go through, or most people have, or somebody has, perhaps?
Yes. Yeah. When I was first doing the research in 2012, the numbers were 90% of people have about 3 to 4 on my top 10 list. Again, there are more. As I go through the list, I don't want anyone looking back and blaming their mom and dad with anger at this stage, or even feeling like ashamed or embarrassed that this might have happened to them. Because as children were just products of our environment. We can't help where we're living and what happens around us. We have no control over that. So the first one is if your parent had any addictions or your caretakers. And I'll tell you how the ACE test is different. They just said if they use drugs or alcohol. Well, I'm an addictions counselor, so I named 12 addictions that really impact kids. They're drugs, alcohol, sex, meaning you knew your parent was a chronic cheater, porn use, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, gaming, TV watching, workaholism, and even addiction to machines, your computers, your gaming things, that you're on those all the time versus interacting with your kids. So that's the first one. The second one is verbal messaging, and that's really profound. Did you hear the words, I love you, and get compliments and feel great about yourself and have good self-esteem? Or instead, in your household where there's a lot of fighting and yelling and screaming between mom and dad towards you, just that angry, chaotic household around verbal messaging or any verbal put downs towards you. Number 3 is emotional abuse or neglect. Number 4 is any physical abuse, rape, or molestation. And again, any of these traumas could have happened inside or outside of the home. I've had some people say I had a really perfect childhood, but then other things happened outside of the home that, is causing problems in adulthood. Okay, the next one is abandonment. And Kaiser didn't even mention abandonment, which shocked me. So there's 2 types of abandonment that I need. There is fault and no fault abandonment. So a no fault abandonment would be an example if a parent happened to die early, or they left the home to go serve their country at war, or even they leave their home a lot and they're on the road because this is how they support their family. That's all no fault examples. Fault examples is that a parent was never involved in your life. They were involved to a certain extent, but then the couple broke up and then you barely saw that parent. And it isn't even mean to include the parent is present, but they're emotionally absent and not connected. So that's abandonment. Number 6 is if you were adopted, part of the foster care system, or had to go live at other people's homes because your parents couldn't take care of you. That even includes grandmas, aunts, and uncles. You're just kind of farmed off. That's 6. Number 7 is the one that most people relate to. It's called personal trauma. And this one is if you ever felt different, not good enough, didn't fit in. You might have been a chubby, overweight child. You might have been skinny and gawky and called a nerd. You might have been the only African American in an all Caucasian school. You could have tried to come out as LGBTQ and you weren't accepted by your peers or your family due to that. So many people can relate to trauma number 7. Mm-hmm. Trauma 8 is around the sibling, and that would be a sibling bullied you or was mean to you. A sibling was the favored one, which we call the golden child, because maybe they were the star athlete, more handsome or beautiful, or the better student. Or they could have been born with a medical issue, and that would have commanded more of mom's and dad's time. So that's trauma 8. Mm-hmm. Trauma 9, there's 2 parts, because I had to bring down trauma 11 somewhere. And that one was community trauma. Now, when I was growing up, there was barely any community trauma. Today, it's rampant, and we are all going through this 100% with the COVID pandemic. That is an example of a community trauma and its impact on the family, the community at large, what's going on in our news to our kids, being isolated, having to wear masks, can't be near their friends. So they are all growing up with this trauma. The other community traumas is our Mother Nature events, floods, fires, hurricanes. It's also mass shootings, school shootings, things like that. And that's tied to the other 9 trauma. Trauma number 9 is family trauma. So again, if you have a parent sick with COVID, you might be losing income. You might have lost your jobs, been laid off, had to be home taking care of kids that should be going off to school and can't. Also, that could be if your parent was incarcerated, or you traveled a lot as a family with moves constantly. So you're in different schools. So you're always the new kid coming into the school, or growing up with a lack mentality. Like, we don't have enough money. So no, you can't have these fancy dinners, or no, you can't have those great athletic shoes that everyone else has because you're selfish for asking for that, So lack of mentality. And then trauma 10 is if your parents had any mental health issues. 2 most difficult are borderline and bipolar disorder. Borderline I describe as fast, erratic moods. You never know what you're going to get. When they're good, they could be great, but when they're bad, they're really horrid. And this parent will get angry and mad at the littlest thing that nobody else would get mad at. And then bipolar is manic depressive. So depression can come out as anger, fatigue, or just checking out emotionally. And a manic phase could be a high or a happy phase, but it's often mixed with an addiction, like an eating binge, a gambling spree, a spending spree. Okay, so that's a manic phase. So those are the top 10 childhood traumas.
Wow, that's a lot to take in here.
Yeah.
Now, how prevalent are these? I'm sure when people have trauma, they're obviously coming to you with one or more of these, but in general, how prevalent are they, and what exactly are you seeing with regard to those?
Okay, so keep in mind that now in 2021, the studies are saying 100% of people had some childhood trauma, and with COVID, that's easy to see. We're all impacted by that, no matter your age or where you live around the world. So there's one for everybody. So these show up in different ways. They show up in life by ongoing anxiety, the impaired stress response, the way you act out when you're stressed out, which we can call emotional triggers, poor self-regulation, social withdrawal and isolation, or the opposite, you could be aggressive, sexual acting out, drug and alcohol use, or any other addictions that you grow up with. You see that as normalized, so then you pick up that addiction. With kids in the schools that I worked with, and I was working when we had the elementary school, their parents were over in Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan, right? So they're worried, is their mom or dad coming home alive? And they can't concentrate on school facts. So many kids were misdiagnosed ADHD, but the fact is, when trauma is up, cortisol is up, and memory and learning is down. So as a specialized counselor in the schools, I was a real advocate for doing holistic remedies to help calm that trigger response or the acting out that looked like ADD in kids when they just couldn't calm themselves from their ongoing anxiety. So way before it was even talked about, I had kids meditating in my office. I had music therapy, like from Louis Miguel. He's a Spanish singer that sings beautifully. I don't understand a word of it, but I know it affected the brain and sent the kids back very calm to the classroom. Behavior modification I would use with the kids. So there's all different types of things for that. And if you don't have these great intervention, there is poor academic achievement, when this is going on. Physical health, it does lead to sleep disorders, eating disorders, poor immune function like fibromyalgia, Epstein-Barr virus, irritable bowel syndrome, cardiovascular disease, shorter lifespan. Like I said, that was all a lot mentioned in the Kaiser study. For emotions, just difficulty handling your emotions, trouble recognizing your emotions. You take a lot of things personally when they weren't meant to be personal. Increased sensitivity to ongoing stress, minimal coping skills to calm yourself down or calm the anxiety or get beyond depression, some feelings of hopelessness. And then in relationships, how do these show up? And this is why our divorce rate's close to 60%, because people aren't learning how to heal their childhood wounds and traumas. And people of trauma attract people of trauma, and then that goes on, and then there's this cyclical toxic relationship. So let's say jealousy and control shows up. That's usually from trauma number 7 and trauma 2. Personal trauma, meaning not feeling good enough, not measuring up in some way, and hearing those verbal messages, or why don't you change your outfit? You look fat in that. Or why do you keep eating that? You're going to get fat. Messages like that, okay, will lead to someone feeling not good enough. So then you're jealous of your partner, or you're trying to control what your partner does because you don't trust yourself or others, or have the self-confidence you should have. Lying and manipulation, where does that come from? That's the fear of the truth. So let's say a young boy got an F on a test. He needed to show it to his father, who's an angry alcoholic, so he made it into an A. Dad didn't notice, and he said, wow, lying works, or charming and manipulating the teacher. Instead of getting a D on the report card, he's so charming and sweet, he's able to pull off a C. Things like that is manipulation around usually an angry parent. That also leads a lot of women and some men to people pleasing, trying to please the angry, difficult parent so that they will be calm and not act out. Perfectionism is one that adults pick up. This is from chaotic households where you felt you had no control growing up, so you became wanting things in control and just so. And I know, working with a lot of kids with eating disorders in the mental health unit of the hospital, that, they were using, I'm going to control what I eat. My parents are screaming at me and punishing me all the time. I'll show them. I just won't eat, which leads to anorexia. When they do eat, I'll eat what I want, then throw that up, and that's bulimia. So, eating disorders come directly from unhealed childhood trauma, and it can last into an adult's life if you don't get a handle of it. There's also impulsivity. People that have had abandonment issues, you're going to see a lot of clinginess in relationship, codependent relationships, or what we call RRS, relationship repetition syndrome, where they are constantly meeting toxic people. And in between, they'll read 100 self-help books and listen to every podcast and summit and say, I got it right now. And then they go off and they get another toxic personality type. They can't figure out why. And that's usually when I get them. It's like, I can't do this anymore. I've had my 3rd toxic relationship that's killing me, my self-esteem. I don't even know who I am anymore. And that's when I do the life and love recovery work. So that's some examples of how it can show up. Now, in business, I didn't mention that yet. If you grow up with a lack mentality, like not enough money in the family, you could be very spurred on to be successful in business. So that's a good thing, right? That can come out of that. And a good example of that is Oprah. Came from very poor means and worked very hard, despite she was always fighting a weight issue early on in her broadcast career, and put down and said her skin was too dark. I mean, it was constant traumatizing messages she was receiving. But her mindset became so super strong to get out of that poverty level. She was going to do anything it took. So she's a great example of a survivor of childhood trauma. But it's in business, so that can be the positive end of it. Now, the negative end is like, let's say you want to start your own business and you get so far, but you're going to have to invest in a coach to get to the next level. It's like, well, I don't want to spend $5,000. What if it doesn't work? And then I've thrown my money away and I might not be able to do it. They have all these examples, but maybe they can do it, but I don't think I can. So you don't have the confidence, or you're so afraid to invest in yourself. That's lack mentality. And many of us grew up with that. I grew up with that. My parents were from the Great Depression. So it's always, we don't have the money, we don't have the money. And I really had to help myself overcome that. And with my coaching career, I invested in 12 high ticket coaches that got me to where I am. So without that and believing in myself and the confidence level, like, I will take what they teach me and I know this will work because I'm making the investment in myself, right? It's a whole yes mentality of like, once I say yes to myself and make that investment, we are then mental mindset, know that we are going to succeed. So it can be a good or a bad. It could be the super competitive co-employee, the one that tries to trick you up or make you jealous or make you look bad. Those are signs. Or the tyrant boss, the yelling, screaming boss. These are signs of unhealed trauma.
Okay, wow, that's
A lot.
yes. And, so now, how are these things you mentioned? They manifest themselves in a variety of different ways. Are there a lot of misdiagnoses, or
Oh,
does it
yeah.
take them a while to really get to the heart of what's going on?
Well, again, when I went to my schooling, childhood trauma was not mentioned once. It was not heard of. It was not heard of. And when I started coming out with it in 2012, I had other therapists say, well, this isn't in the DSM-4. This isn't real. This doesn't exist. People would think of trauma as big T trauma, like you ended up in a car accident and broke 3 bones, or you were physically abused repeatedly. People would see that as childhood trauma. But these small, repetitive, emotional messages are being bullied over years. It is proven that the same impact on the brain and the body cells are and the nervous system are exactly the same as big T traumas. So nobody was talking about them, and it started a little bit with the ACOA work, adult child of an alcoholic, that they went through this kind of traumatic upbringing, but it didn't get into the full scope of all these different ways that kids and people experience trauma. And because I was working with kids with all these different traumas, like parents off to war and, going to the 8th foster home because they feel nobody wants them, this is real trauma. And when you work with it and you see it, then that's why it should be on these lists, right? So that's why I made the top 10 list, from the repetitive things I saw over and over again.
Okay. So how does that transformation occur, that healing occur, in regardless of what trauma you're going through?
Okay, well, what I do for everyone that wants to meet with me is a 1-hour life and love transformation discovery session. I do 5 assessments. I put them all together. I do the puzzle work and explain from what they experienced in childhood. This is why this and that is showing up in adulthood. So now that person in front of me finally understands what's going on. Because I have a saying, you can't change what you don't know or understand. And I was at that place. It was very frustrating. So when people do that 1-hour session with me, it's like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. So now I know what their story is and what I have to address. I do mostly individual one-on-one client work. I do have small groups for singles, 10 or less. That's it. I won't take more than 10 in a group. And I'll do it once or twice a year. That's it. But most work is one-on-one because I can totally focus on that person, that client's story, their healing, their transformation. There's a lot of things I do: holistic mind, body, and spirit. So they do a certain type of meditation that I teach. I do vitamin therapy. None of my people are on psychotropic drugs. If they come to me, we wean them off usually because they don't need them. It's mindset work, and it's healing the trauma, rewriting the story, reparenting yourself. So I use like 100 different skills depending on what they need, depending on how severe these things were and how they're showing up. So not only do I see how many of the 10 that they have, I do assess the severity level of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most severe. And when you get up to the highest levels, like 9 10s and 9 10s, that's when you see sociopathy. Around 8s is narcissism, psychopathy. And psychopaths are people that are sociopaths, and narcissists that kill with no remorse. And the sociopath is someone that uses another for pleasure, profit, or lifestyle advancement. And the narcissist is just super self-focused. And again, maybe because they didn't get that love that they craved and wanted, as they were a child. So they grow up super ego and self-focused.
Okay.
Mm.
Now, how are there some examples that you could share about how that transformation occurs and that's what their life turns out to be?
I have so many client examples. Yes, and everyone that wrote a testimonial for me has allowed me to share their story. But I'll share someone younger, and then I'll share someone older. So I have a client, Amy. She came to me at 17, her first year in community college. Her mom came to me and questioned about her relationship, and I said, honestly, I think what you have is really emotionally healthy. I am not seeing any warning signs. But you said your daughter doesn't like him. She's yelling at you. She's acting up. She's angry. What's going on there? So she was adopted, one of the traumas. Her father ended up having an affair and leaving and marrying the affair. So here from adoption is giving up, right? The loss of. So then it was just her mother and her at the house until the boyfriend entered the picture. So she didn't know why she was so angry. She just knew she was angry. Okay, so that feeling like that's all I have is my mom. If he takes her, I have no one, right? So she wasn't doing well in college, but she was a smart girl. She was a hostess at a fast food place and dating a 30-year-old dishwasher. So I said, we've got to get her out of there. I've got to get her in her full focus direction of what she wants to do with her life so she can buy into that new dream and goal and figure out what she wants to do and get her refocused on school. And then we will find her a job that correlates to her future dream. And that's exactly what we did. She decided she wanted to be an interior designer and architect, like doing rehabs. We got her, I taught her job coaching. We got her a great job in a home design center. Within 6 months, she ends up being a manager of that center. She gets in the top college for architecture, interior design. So her whole life changed. Her and her mom became super close. She was in the wedding. She loves the guy that her mom is with. And we had to do a lot of healing around the father because she wasn't talking to him for a couple of years. So there was a lot to work on. And her video stories on my homepage at my website, rianamilne.com, or on my YouTube channel. And I have another story. Oya, who is a Russian immigrant, came to the States with 250 US dollars at age 18, ended up marrying, was in a very toxic marriage, had a little boy. She had called me crying in tears. I remember the exact day because I was in shorts and a ponytail and locking up my house because we had Hurricane Irma coming. So I said, listen, I'm calling you back because I could lose electricity for 4 or 5 days. I don't know. And I can hear you're in distress. So I talked to her. She ended up being a diamond client of mine. Her story is quite amazing. Her son was even angry at her. He used to put her down like the father did. So we helped her with her grow her business. We helped her self-esteem. And today she's very happily married, living in a mansion on the ocean. They have a new baby girl. So, I mean, her life totally changed. She got through the divorce. She went out dating. So she was a 6-month client of mine. And we had to do life and love transformation, healing the trauma, building the self-esteem back, teaching her the dating skills to find someone emotionally healthy, loving, and kind, which we call consciously aware. And we did all that. So she ends up, writing me a few months later. She found a great guy. They're now engaged, and now they're happily married. So it's all good. It's really great stories. And her tape is also on my website.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, when anybody, I guess, is going through that trauma, or I mean, whatever trauma they're going through here, how is it? Does it stifle their ability to develop different habits in life, different healthy habits, whether it's food or whether it's education or other things?
Yeah. Well, kids model what they see. They don't always do what they're told verbally because if it's like a parent saying, no, don't smoke, and they're smoking because smoking's bad for you. It's one thing to say it, it's another to see it modeled all the time. And most kids of smokers grow up smokers, but not all, but some. So, the modeled behavior is super important for what a parent or caretaker does for their kids. Let's say the person that became the people pleaser to make sure that alcoholic mom was calm. And then she grows up, she marries, and she learns, well, I get and give love by pleasing everyone. So this is a true case. A woman came to me. She goes, nobody in my family loves me. I do everything for my husband and my kids, and they do nothing back for me. Nobody loves me like I love them. And I'm burnt out and I'm angry. That's because she was doing everything and not allowing them to do anything themselves. Her boundaries were so stretched out. So, yes, these normalized behaviors, well, these prior behaviors that were coping skills became normalized habits, patterns that become dysfunctional as an adult. And it's usually those which tear the relationship apart. Like a kid growing up, and let's say early on as a teen, he tries to say, but I did it because of this, and he gets slapped across the face. He goes, you don't tell us anything. We don't want to hear you, and we're angry at you. You go to your room. So this kid learned, wow, I better just shut down, be quiet, and say nothing. And that was their norms. So as a married man, when she said, just talk to me, what are you angry for? He's like sick inside that he can't do it because the trauma is so real. He's being re-triggered. We call emotional triggered back to those early times where he was hit or beat if he tried to speak up, and he can't do it as an adult and then becomes passive aggressive. He shuts down and becomes angry later. So many of these patterns become normalized due to what was modeled when they were kids.
Okay. So does every trauma have some triggers that emerge, I guess, later in life?
They can. That's usually what leads to depression or ongoing anxiety. You know, if you have a very anxious mother, then you usually grow up to be a very anxious adult, a worrywart, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I mean, the idea is we have to really identify what the traumas are, how you get triggered, and correct it, you know? And once you understand where that's coming from, then you rewrite the story.
Okay.
And you come up with a different way. And there's also spirituality where you have to have empathy for your parents and your grandparents and what their story was, because the research shows childhood trauma goes through at least 3 generations. So, you know, we start looking at some of the events with empathy. Well, why would your mom do that? Well, my mom beat me because she was beat by her alcoholic father. That's what she knew. This is how you punish kids. Okay, so we have to look at the stories throughout the family system.
Okay. Now, on the flip side, you talk about emotionally healthy, evolved, and consciously aware relationships.
Yep, that's what we teach.
Yes. Will you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah. Well, that's section 4 of my #1 bestseller, Love Beyond Your Dreams. So there's a lot of pages on that, what that looks like. But I'll give you some tips from page 294. Some of the things, and they start with F's. So one is foundation. You've got to have a solid foundation, the ability to trust, be trusted, be confident with your partner, who they are as an individual, share the same moral values. These couples that jump right to sexuality, and there's so much of that, what I call it hookup culture, there's no foundation there. They're going for the icing on the cake and forgetting the cake, and that's why these relationships fall apart. Another one is flexibility. You have to be open-minded to your partner's feelings and opinions, caring, easygoing, and understanding, emotionally open so that you can have loving conversations. Fidelity means honesty, loyalty, and integrity, doing the right things when nobody's looking. Friendship. The best relationships are born in a deep friendship, like they're your best friend, they're your buddy. You have a lot of fun together, which is another F. Common interests, hobbies, shared activities. Intimacy is a balance of love and deep friendship. Daily affection, respect for each other, and romance. So you have to have that. And 2 balanced, emotionally healthy individuals. You can't have one who's emotionally healthy and thinks of their partner before they do say or act. And if you have another one acting out like the impulse person, I want the red sports car. I didn't have anything when I'm growing up. My wife will just have to deal with it and come home with it. Okay, so that's an impulse buy from somebody that is thinking more of themselves and their lack. That's around lack mentality. So 2 balanced individuals, really important that they work as a team. And the last tip is one of the most important, they say, is spiritual practice. Not religious, but spiritual people, 24/7, doing the right things, again, when nobody's looking, thinking of their partners. Is this for the good of all? So spirituality is an important piece of what I do have to teach to my clients as well.
Okay. Now, do these 5 things and 5 pieces of that really ideal relationship, if you want to call it, now, do they apply to any and all of the traumas that you indicated earlier?
Well, we have
Or
to
is it
heal the
both?
trauma. If I'm working with a couple, I have to take partner A and partner B and heal their childhood trauma wounds. They have to do the individual work to heal that. Then they
Mm,
understand their partner's trigger points, how they're pushing each other's buttons, and they have to learn a whole new communication style about when one is triggered. And they practice that and they learn that. And when these couples get it, they use it forever. Like I've had couples I worked with in 2005, 6, 8, they're still together
mhm,
because they were able to get through that toxic fighting that went on all the time.
mhm,
So it's like three entities I work with: partner A, partner B, and the relationship. And then for singles, part A, again, is healing the trauma. What is the life they desire? Identifying the goals and dreams that they haven't done for themselves, too anxious to do it, too depressed, too stressed out. We get that going. And when they're starting to feel really amazing about who they are and seeing their life come together in all these different areas, which we call the life wheel,
mhm,
then they learn how to attract and what to look for in someone who's emotionally healthy, conscious, and a great partner. And
mm.
there's a lot to learn there that people have never heard of before. I say dating is an art and a science, and it's a lot of it's based in psychology. It's not about chemistry.
Absolutely. So you heal the trauma and then you can build that relationship in
Right.
whatever context, whether it's personal, whether it's business, whether it's, some other type of
Right.
relationship.
Parent-child relationships as well. Every adult I work with that have children, I always ask, how are the kids doing? For example, I
Mm,
have a mom signed up for herself, but her son's at that awkward age 16 and depressed to go back to school. And I don't know what I want to do. And I don't really want to do a sport. But the mom says he would just sit around gaming all day, which is a depressant. So I have been brainstorming with her to make sure we have his future goals and dreams, something he can buy into. So she's the catalyst to tell him what to do. I'm teaching her to do this with him. So it's really turning around great. It really is. So being that relationship, whatever relationship is hurting, we have to address them all. So we do that in part one. And if they are single, then we go through the fears of dating, what to look for, what the questions to ask and date one or two way before intimacy. You don't even think about intimacy until certain questions are answered because that person in front of you, we don't care how cute they are. If that is not a good match for our direction, our goals, our dreams, then you become friends.
absolutely. Now, what's the first step? I mean, there's so many different traumas and so many different issues. How
The first
can
thing
somebody
is
move
just,
forward?
yeah, sign up for the Life and Love Transformation Discovery Session. Right now, it's on a super special. It's only $47. It's a 497 1 hour assessment with me. So it's super cheap. Sign up for that now. Go to my website. It's rianamilne.com. You can find that on the orange button on the header right there. Also, you can find the free ebook going into childhood and love trauma and it's healing better there. You can take the 4 free love tests. You can get book chapter downloads of my #1 bestseller, Love Beyond Your Dreams, and the sister book about the mindset for success, which is
Mm,
Live Beyond Your Dreams. You get the first 60 pages. And then I have a podcast called Lessons in Life and Love with Coach Riana Milne. And my YouTube channel, I think I have 250 tapes and videos and audios there now that you can listen to.
fantastic. We will include all of those in the show notes. And as we wrap up, Rihanna, is there some piece of advice that you could provide as someone moves forward here? What's something that, a big takeaway that they can kind of
Well, the
remember
most
as
important thing is this can be healed. It is a program that's 4 to 6 months. My people love it because they love the people that they have become. They're like a rebirth. But don't wait. My oldest person came to me at 76 years old. And he's there, oh my God, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. He had 4 wives divorce him. And he's now been with the same girlfriend since he graduated, 5 years now. So don't wait. Today is the time. Now is the time to create the life you desire and to have the love you deserve. Just know that you're worth it, and the skills that you learn, you will use the rest of your life.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Rihanna, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. We love your work. You're helping so
Thank
many
you.
people, and I'm sure it feels good to you personally.
I
And
love it. I love what I do. Yeah, it's
absolutely,
incredible. And the transformation and the stories and seeing them just so happy, it's the best work I could ever do.
oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Rihanna.
Thank you, Michelle.